Hey guys, today's practice question is 4.934 plus 7.1 plus 9.08. So to add these numbers, we want to stack them on top of each other and then do addition that way. So when we stack numbers on top of each other, we want to line them up by place value, which is super simple when we have decimals because all we have to do is stack our decimal points on top of each other. So 7.1 is going to go right here and 9.08 is going to go right here. Now if you look, you'll see that there are some holes here. Those can be kind of confusing on our eyes in making sure we line up all our numbers properly and add them. So what we're going to do is we're going to put zeros here to make it just look a little bit nicer. You can add zeros after any decimal point and it doesn't change the value of the original number. So now that we have that, we're going to add each column from right to left. So 4 plus 0 is 4, so we're going to write down a 4. 3 plus 0 plus 8 is 11, so we're going to write down a 1 and carry a 1. 9 plus 1 plus 0 is 10, plus the one that we carried is 11, so we're going to write down a 1 and carry a 1. All our decimal points need to be lined up, even in our answer, so we're going to write that down there. 4 plus 7 plus 9 plus 1 is 21. So our answer is 21.114. Hey guys, today's practice question is 28.19 minus 9. So when we subtract numbers, the most common way to do this is to stack them on top of each other and then subtract that way. So when we stack them on top of each other, we want to line numbers up by place value. So here we have a 9, which is just a number in the ones place. So we're going to put our 9 right here, and we're going to subtract. Now this looks a little bit confusing because we have lots of holes here. The good news is that with a whole number, we can add a decimal point and as many zeros after it as we want, and it doesn't change the value of the number at all. So now let's subtract our columns from right to left. So when we do this, we have 9 minus 0, which is 9. 1 minus 0 is 1. We want to line up our decimal places, so we're going to put it in the same spot in our answer. 8 minus 9 is some negative number, which we don't want, so we're going to borrow from our tens place. 2 becomes a 1, and our 8 becomes an 18. 18 minus 9 is 9, so we write down a 9, and 1 minus nothing is 1. So our answer is 19.19. Hey guys, today's practice question says, round your answer to the tenths place, 0.088 times 277.9. Okay, so I'm going to set this up for multiplication like this. I'll explain to you in just a second why I'm doing it this way, but I want to just set it up first. Okay, so notice that I put 277.9 on top. That means I switched these two numbers, which is okay to do because of the commutative property of multiplication. Now the reason I chose to put this one on top is because it has more digits than 0.088. Basically, I just mean that it has more non-zero digits because since we're multiplying, 0 times any number is 0, and so we won't really have to worry about these two zeros right here. So this number has more digits, and that's why I put it on the top. If you put it the other way, that is totally fine. You will get the correct answer. This will just save you a couple of steps. Another thing to note is that I did not line up these numbers by place value like we do for addition and subtraction. Remember, with addition and subtraction, we line our decimal points on top of each other. Instead, I lined up the furthest right number for each number. That's what you want to do for multiplication, so make sure you line up your numbers properly. Now we're going to multiply these two numbers just like we would with any multiplication like this. We're going to completely ignore the decimal points for right now, and we'll add those at the very end. So 8 times 9 is 72, so I'm going to write down the 2, carry the 7. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 7 is 63, so I'm going to write down a 3, carry 6. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 6 is 62, so I'm going to write down the 2, carry the 6. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 6 is 22, so I'm going to write down 22. Okay, now I'm going to cross out my 8, cross out these numbers so we don't accidentally add them in our next step, add a 0 because we're now multiplying by the next number, and then I'm going to multiply from here. 8 times 9 is 72, so I write down the 2, carry the 7. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 7 is 63, so I write down a 3, carry a 6. 8 times 7 is 56, plus 6 is 62, so I write down a 2, carry a 6. 8 times 2 is 16, plus 6 is 22, so I write down 22. From here, we're going to add these two numbers. Notice that we could cross out this 8 and keep multiplying, but again, we have multiplication by 0, so we're just going to have two really long lines of zeros. So we don't even have to worry about those. Now we're going to add. 2 plus 0 is 2, 3 plus 2 is 5, 2 plus 3 is 5, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, and then 2. Okay, now here's where the decimal point comes in. So we want to look at each number individually. This number, if you start at the very right, you see that the decimal point was moved over one place to the left. For this number, we see that it happens 1, 2, 3 places to the left. For our final answer, we're going to add these two together. So 1 plus 3 is 4. So we're going to start at the right and move 1, 2, 3, 4 spots to the left. And this is where our decimal point is going to go. So we're almost done. The only step we have left is that this says to round our answer to the 10th place. So when we round, we're going to underline the place that we're rounding to, 10th place, and then look at the number to the right of it. If a number is 5 or greater, then you round up. And if it's less than 5, then you round down, which just means that the number is going to stay the same. So this is 5, which means that this 4 is going to round up to a 5. So our final answer is 24.5. Hey guys, today's practice question says, Roger's car gets an average of 25 miles per gallon. If his gas tank holds 16 gallons, about how far can he drive on a full tank? So Roger's car can travel 25 miles on 1 gallon of gas. So if we know that a full tank has 16 gallons, all we have to do is multiply this by 16 gallons. When we do that, that's kind of like multiplying by 16 gallons over 1, because if you put any number over 1, it keeps it as the same number. So when we do this, we see that our units cancel out and we'll be left with an answer in miles, which is what we want. You don't necessarily have to set it up this way. This just shows you that the gallons will cancel out and you'll end up with the units that you want. So now we multiply our numbers. 25 times 16 gives us 400. And then we know our units is miles. So with 16 gallons of gas, which is a full tank, he can travel 400 miles. Hey guys, today's practice question says, express the answer in simplest form. 2/3 plus 2/7. Now remember, when we add fractions, we have to have fractions with similar denominators. If they're not the same, then we aren't able to add the fractions. Clearly, 3 and 7 are not the same, so we're going to have to convert our fractions to fractions that have the same denominator. The way that we do this is by finding the least common multiple of 3 and 7. Now you can do this by listing all of the multiples of 3 and 7 and then finding the smallest one, which is 21. Or if you don't want to find the least common multiple because that's a little bit too confusing or you just get stuck for a specific problem, another way you can solve this problem is by simply multiplying the denominators by one another. That will always get you a common denominator. The only problem with doing that is that sometimes it will cause simplifying at the end to be a little bit more tricky. But it will totally work. It's completely up to you which way you want to do it. So the least common multiple of 3 and 7 is 21, which also happens to be what 3 times 7 is. So we're kind of combining the two ways to solve this one. So if I want to convert 2/3 to a fraction with a denominator of 21, we know that we have to multiply 3 by 7 to get 21. So we're also going to multiply our numerator by 7. So our new fraction will be 2 times 7 over 3 times 7. And then to convert our second fraction, we're going to have to multiply 7 by 3 to get 21. So we also have to multiply our numerator by 3. If you notice, this is like multiplying by 7 over 7 or multiplying by 3 over 3. Which when you simplify either of those, you'll get 1. So we're really not changing the value of our fractions at all. We're just changing them so that they have a different denominator. So now if we multiply 2 times 7, we get 14. And 3 times 7 is 21. Plus 2 times 3 is 6 over 7 times 3 is 21. Now we have similar denominators, so our answer will have the same denominator, 21. And then we'll add the numerators. 14 plus 6 is 20. 20 over 21 can't be simplified at all, so this is our final answer. Hey guys, today's practice question says Aaron worked 2.5 hours on Monday, 3 3/4 hours on Tuesday, and 7 2/3 hours on Thursday. How many hours did he work in all? So since it asked how many hours he worked in all, we're going to add all three of these numbers. So we're going to add 2.5 plus 3 3/4 plus 7 2/3. Now the way that we're going to add these mixed numbers is by first adding the fractional parts and then by adding the whole number parts. Then we'll combine those two numbers. So let's start by adding the fractional parts. 1/2 plus 3/4 plus 2/3. Now to add fractions, we have to have a common denominator between all of the fractions. So to find the common denominator, we're going to find the least common multiple of 2, 3, and 4. The least common multiple of these three numbers is 12. So we're going to convert each of these fractions to a fraction with a denominator of 12. So to do that, we need to figure out what number times 2 gives us 12. Well, 2 times 6 equals 12. So we're going to multiply our denominator by 6 to get 12. If we multiply the denominator by 6, we also need to multiply our numerator by 6. So this is going to give us our new fraction that we'll add later. So now let's do that for our second fraction. 4 times 3 is 12. So if we multiply 4 by 3, we're also going to have to multiply 3 by 3. And then 3 times 4 is 12. So we'll also have to multiply 2 times 4. So see, I took the numbers from the numerators for each of these and then multiplied them by whatever number we multiplied the denominator by. That means we're multiplying essentially this fraction by 1 because 6 over 6 is 1. Same for 3 over 3 and 4 over 4. So ultimately this doesn't change our fractions, it just converts them to a different fraction so that they can be added together. So that's what we're doing right here. Now we're going to multiply these out to get our new fractions. So 1 times 6 is 6 over 12 because that's what we're looking for. 3 times 3 is 9 over 12. And 2 times 4 is 8 over 12. Now, since we have a common denominator for all three fractions, we can leave the denominator the same and add our numerators. So 6 plus 9 is 15, and 15 plus 8 is 23. Now this number is an improper fraction, so we need to convert this to a mixed number. To do that, we figure out how many times we can pull 12 out of 23. We can only pull one full 12 out of 23, and then we'll subtract. 23 minus 12 gives us 11, so we are left with 11 in our numerator and 12 in our denominator. So our fraction is 1 and 11/12. Now we're going to move on to adding our whole number parts. So we're going to do 2 plus 3 plus 7. 2 plus 3 is 5, plus 7 is 12. And then last but not least, we're going to add these two numbers together. So we're going to add 1 and 11/12 plus 12 to get 13 and 11/12. So Aaron worked 13 and 11/12 hours this week. Hey guys, today's practice question says express the answer in simplest form. 3 4/7 minus 2 3/14. Okay, so when we have numbers that are mixed numbers like this and we're subtracting them, one way we can subtract them is by first subtracting the fractional parts and then subtracting the whole number parts. So let's try that. Let's focus first on the fractional parts. So we have 4/7 minus 3/14. Now remember, when we subtract fractions, our denominators have to be the same. So we need to convert them to a common denominator. We do that by considering the least common multiple of 7 and 14. Well, if you multiply 7 by 2, you'll get 14. So that's our least common multiple. So we're going to multiply this first fraction by 2 over 2. When we multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2, it's the same thing as multiplying by 2 over 2, which is a fraction that simplifies to 1. So it'll change our numbers, but the ratio and the overall fraction will remain the same. So we have that minus 3 over 14. And now let's multiply. 4 times 2 is 8. 7 times 2 is 14. Minus 3/14. Now that our denominators are the same, we can subtract our fractions. So our denominator for our answer is going to stay the same. It's going to be 14. And then we subtract our numerators. 8 minus 3 is 5. So the fractional part of our answer is 5/14. Now let's look at the whole number part. So we have 3 minus 2, which is equal to 1. So this whole number subtracted is equal to 1 and 5/14. Notice that we just took the part from our whole numbers being subtracted and the part from our fractions being subtracted and stuck them together, and that's our answer. Hey guys, today's practice question says, express the answer in simplest form. A recipe calls for 1½ cups of sugar, 3 2/3 cups of flour, and 2/3 cups of milk. If you want to double the recipe, what will be the total amount of cups of ingredients required? So to answer this question, we need to add these three numbers together and then multiply by 2. So we're going to start by adding 1½ plus 3 2/3 plus 2/3. Now there are a couple ways of going about this. We could add them as mixed numbers, or what we're going to do is convert them to improper fractions and then add them. The reason we're going to do that is because later when we multiply by 2, we'll want this number as an improper fraction, so we'll do the conversions now and we won't have to worry about it later. But if you choose to add them as mixed numbers and then convert to an improper fraction later, that also will work. So to convert to an improper fraction, we need to multiply our denominator by our whole number and add our numerator. That will give us our new numerator over the original denominator. So for this first fraction, we're going to have 2 times 1 plus 1 over the original denominator 2. And then for our second fraction, we'll do 3 times 3 plus 2 over the original denominator 3. And then we simply add 2 over 3. We're leaving it alone because that's a proper fraction, and so we don't have to convert it to anything. Now let's simplify. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So we have 3 over 2, plus 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. So 11 over 3, plus 2 over 3. Now if you take a look, you'll see that our denominators here are not the same, which means we can't add our fractions just yet. We need to convert them to common denominators, which in this case will do 6. So to convert this first fraction, 3 over 2, to a denominator of 6, we'll need to multiply 2 times 3, because 2 times 3 equals 6. And then whatever we do to the denominator, we also need to do to the numerator. So we're going to multiply the numerator 3 by 3. Now let's look at our second fraction, 11 over 3. So if we have 11 over 3, to get a denominator of 6, we'll need to multiply 3 by 2. And then what we do to the denominator, we also need to do to the numerator. And then finally, we have 2 over 3. So we're going to do the same thing. 3 times 2 gives us 6, so we'll also multiply 2 by 2. Now let's simplify our fractions. 3 times 3 is 9 over 6, plus 11 times 2 is 22 over 6, plus 2 times 2 is 4 over 6. Now, since our denominators are the same, we can simply add our numerators. 9 plus 22 is 31, plus 4 is 35, so we have 35 over 6. And this is the amount of cups in a single recipe, but we want to double our recipe. So from here, we're going to take this number and multiply it by 2. So 35 over 6 times 2. Now, we can't multiply a fraction by a whole number, so we need to convert our whole number to a fraction. We do that simply by putting 2 over 1. Now, the reason we can do this is because the fraction bar means divide, and any number divided by itself is the original number. So 2 divided by 1 is equal to 2, and we haven't changed the value of this number at all. But we have it set up so that we can multiply our fractions. So now we multiply our numerators together. 35 times 2 is 70 over 6 times 1 is 6. Then we simplify our fraction by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2. 70 divided by 2 is 35, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Now before we move on, I want to show you a quick trick. We're going to jump back to this step right here. 35 over 6 times 2 over 1. Now up here, we multiplied and then we simplified our fractions. Another way you can do this is simplify first and then multiply. Sometimes this makes the multiplication easier, so it's always nice to look and see if you can do it this way. So over here, we divided both the numerator and denominator by 2. We're going to do the same thing back here, except we can divide either numerator by the number or either denominator by the same number. So again, we're going to use 2 because we know that's what we need to simplify this fraction, but look for other numbers and other problems. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I'm going to simplify that to 1. And 6 divided by 2 is 3, so I'm going to simplify this to 3. See, it doesn't matter that they're not on top of each other as long as it's either numerator and either denominator. Now all you have to do is multiply across. 35 times 1 is 35, and 3 times 1 is 3. And we got the exact same answer as when we did it before. So now the only thing we have left to do is convert our improper fraction back to a mixed number. Because our original problem gave us mixed numbers, that's what we want to convert to. We don't want to leave our answer as an improper fraction. So the way that we do that is by saying how many times 3 can fit into 35. 3 fits into 35 11 times because 3 times 11 is 33. Now we're going to subtract that number from 35. So 35 minus 33 is equal to 2. That's the numerator of our fraction for the mixed number. And then we have our original denominator of 3. That doesn't change at all. So our final answer is 11 2/3 cups. Hey guys, today's practice question says, express the answer as a mixed number or fraction in simplest form. 2 3/9 times 1/3. Now when we multiply fractions, we can't multiply by a mixed number. So we have to convert our mixed number to an improper fraction. So to do that, we take 2 3/9 and multiply our denominator by our whole number. So 9 times 2 plus our numerator. And that becomes the numerator of our improper fraction. And then our denominator stays the same, so over 9. 9 times 2 is 18, plus 3 is 21, so we have 21 over 9. Now we can multiply 21 over 9 by 1/3. I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do this. So the first way is simply to multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. 21 times 1 is 21. 9 times 3 is 27. And now we simplify. So we can divide both the numerator and denominator by 3 and get 7 over 9. So that's one way to do it. Another way is to come back to this step, 21 over 9 times 1 over 3. And we can essentially simplify our fractions before we multiply them. So instead of simplifying last, we can simplify first. The way that I know to do that is by looking at things that are in the numerator and denominators that can be divided by one another. So 21 can be divided by 3. So when I do that, I divide 21 by 3 and this simplifies to 7. And I divide 3 by 3 and this simplifies to 1. Now I'm going to multiply across. 7 times 1 is 7, and 9 times 1 is 9. And if you notice, we get the same answer as earlier. So you can do it either way. You can multiply and then simplify, or you can simplify and then multiply. So either way, our final answer is 7/9. Hey guys, today's practice question says, express the answer as a mixed number or fraction in simplest form. 2/7 divided by 1/6. Now when we divide fractions, we use the saying keep, change, flip. That means we're going to keep our first fraction the same, 2/7. We're going to change our division sign to a multiplication sign, and we're going to flip the second fraction. So 1/6 becomes 6/1. Now we multiply across. 2 times 6 is 12, and 7 times 1 is 7. Now if you notice, our question says we want to express this as a mixed number. So we're going to have to convert this improper fraction to a mixed number. We'll do that by seeing how many times 7 can fit into 12. Well, 7 times 2 is 14, so not quite that. So that means we're only going to be able to take 1 whole 7 out of 12. Then we're going to subtract 12 minus 7, which gives us 5 left over, which is the numerator of our fractional part, and then our denominator stays as 7. So the answer to our question is 1 5/7.